only put one to sleep so far. And she can't hear me because she's sound asleep. Here is the last of these slides, and just to show you that it also occurs in Paris. This is the Place Royale, or the Place de Vosges, the same. And here it is. And it too today, if you go to Paris, you'll certainly come here and see this is how was once housing for the royal family, not the family itself, but the court. And the court lived here and then came over to the palace. But today, anybody can live here. We took control of it again after the revolution. And here is our square, and all of it is retail at the base. And it's a delight to be there. Back to Italy, this is what it's like. You know that. You've seen 1,000 posters. You know that's what it's like. It's not always pigeons, but it is our city for sale. I'm sorry. The next is I want to show you a couple of projects that we have done over the years. I just picked projects, not that they were done yesterday. This is very old, in fact, but projects that take on different urban sites. That's what I thought was important for this class, at least. I got a call one day from a planner by the name of Rob Creer, a terrific fellow, and he said that he had been given the job of making a new plan for this amount of The Hague in Holland. The bus station is over here, which is right there. There's an existing building here. I'll talk more about that in a minute. But all of this had been cleared. These houses, right along here, are going to be kept. And his job was to pick about a dozen architects to come in and get along with each other and make an urban setting in The Hague. That's the capital of Holland. It's a very important site. One developer, one Alfred Taubman, who had the strength to do this, and he got the loans, and he had the wherewithal to bring these architects together and have sessions all weekend long showing everybody's plan, so that the guy that did this and the guy that did this would know how to make that they shared. The person that did this would know how to work with me. Oh, I gave it away. And that they shared, the square that they shared. This was our friend Caesar Pelli over here, and his front door was actually over on this side. So he and I didn't share very much except the trash bin behind his building, which was here. Not built yet, it's right here, will be. And my building, which is here. But Michael, your building's already built. Well, yes and no. They said that why they wanted me to do this is because this building was filled with asbestos. From the DIA, we know about asbestos. And so we had to stop, they had to stop construction and reconstruction of this. And they had to move everybody out. They took off the facade. They took away the floors and ceiling, left the slabs, left the concrete, left the columns. And what we had left was a series of 20 floors of horizontal slabs and the columns that supported them. That's what I was left with. And that was my job, to redeploy all the people that would work here now and here, find good housing for them. Went from housing to offices. And there were two ministries, the Ministry of Health and Urban Affairs, and the Ministry of Sport. Who knew? But there they were, together, locked together in this square footage, which was this single building. Well, here's where architectural expression starts to come into the equation, because you guessed that this is my building, and here are the two ministries, 1 and 2, Luckily, the core was in the center, and I can move from side to side. Everybody joins everybody else in the core. And we have at the base retail, like I've been preaching here, and retail out here, major street out here. And here's my building connecting to the next building over here. And here's a square that's every minute the kind of glue that I expect to make with the building adjacent to it. Not another building, but the adjacency of that and the space that they share. Now, I had walked The Hague for some time, and I had found buildings like this. Remember that first slide I showed you of the existing building? It was all glass. Now, what are you going to do? I know that I would be criticized if I put in real windows, as I really wanted to do. They wanted glass because they had known glass. Here is an 18th century building, house in The Hague, a rich person's house, with windows that go floor to ceiling, but because glass is very expensive, the panes are very small. There's always a reason for these things. Here's the front door. And here are these windows that penetrate the facade. It's like a good developer saying, what's the distance between the core and the glass today? We don't even say core to window, we say core to glass, knowing that that's what the architect will be required to do. So this architect, like a good citizen, wanting to show all of the activity here in the square and to borrow a little light, he pushes the glass out about 8 inches. And there's a little glass pane on the side. It's a marvelous small move for that house. Here's another house, 100 years later. The windows, you'll see, are about the same size. By that time, the floor to ceilings had grown, and the ceiling heights were higher. It was a kind of internal air conditioning. The hot air had gone to the top of all of these rooms. And so if they open this window and one on the back facade, they've got through breezes in a building that traps all the hot air in the ceiling. They had learned that in 100 years. But here's essentially the same window as that window is. So in my building, I thought, what better to do than to have a whole series of these windows and to play this same game of pushing the window out as bay windows, allowing them to look up and down the square, which is here, and not pretending that you're in that house, but knowing that you're in a scale of a city that is very, very precious. You can't here, as one of my colleagues did, over here on this side, not a part of our arrangement, made a glass box. A glass box that twisted and turned and did all of that. And after all of our hard work, it gets spoiled by somebody making this guy over here. Anyway, here's Caesar Pelli's building. He too made windows. We didn't talk about that much. Our windows. One of the Dutch architects on this side made a series of slabs there. Rob Greer did his own building here, more windows. And here are the windows of the 17th and 18th and 19th centuries along these two facades, still a part of our district called the Castalia. Here's another square in here. Back here you can barely see it, but there's a rotunda here, a voided rotunda like the Uffizi, which is where the kids play soccer and all of that. Richard Myers City Hall is here. It's all white and glass and could be moved from there to any city in the world. He's a good friend of mine, but here's my building built, and here it is next to what's called the Queen's Cottage. She's not in this anymore, but at one time it was her residence. Strangely enough, we're now finishing up a building where next door to her real residence, to the palace. You can imagine how sensitive that was, next to the White House for The Hague. But they went to this American architect, because they knew they would get a building that was sensitive to what her building is. Here's our void in between the two buildings. This is my facade here. It's a throwaway. I don't care. You're not going to stand back here and look at the facade. You're going to walk underneath its loggia or walk out in here and see art shows and that sort of thing, and kiosks that are set up with people who sell various things during the day. This is a renovation, so I had to take a floor out here to get this double height volume that you see here at the entry. And I had to tease you all the way through here that you were going to be lifted up through this building. So here's the escalator that takes you up to the elevator bank into the original elevator bank to that building. The next site is wholly different than that one. This is in Fukuoka, Japan, which is a city we don't talk very much about, but it's a city that was overbuilt in the 80s, and I went to Japan 103 times, not for this building, but for a dozen buildings in Japan. So yes, I love sushi. But here is the site, and you'll see this obviously is my building here. I think it's obvious. Here's the main street there, and our site is very, very long, very deep. It's even back here, and there's a working river back there. It's not a river. Fukuoka is filled with working rivers. It's not like Venice, but there are a lot of these almost canal-like rivers. So this is not a place to go and sit with your lunch. There are steam barges there and that sort of thing. But here's the dimension of the site. This narrow place here, I had to get retail at the base. I had to get a place for taxi cabs to come in, drop people off for a Hyatt hotel, which was here, and on another developer here, the construction company itself, would own that, and that. So these people had to get along, and these people had to get along. And we had suites in the upper floors divided again, retail, another developer there. So we had this group of people who all must sort of learn to talk to each other. And we tried to do that with the architecture. There are suites for the hotel, as I said. There's retail at the base. There are regular rooms here and special rooms for the hotel. And then behind it, an office building. Now we're going to take several trips through this whole ensemble this way. Here's the plan. Remember, it's our city. We're taking control. We get to make the plan. And so here comes the cab in. Cab drives the wrong way in Japan, so he's coming this way, and he actually leaves that way. Here are bakery shops and a little restaurant that are there. So that's given back to the city. Here's our loggia on the front face where people can walk out of the rain. Here's the front door to the hotel. Here's the interior of the lobby of the hotel, check-in and all of that. We'll look at all of this in detail because I wanted you to see the detail of the architecture. Now, underneath all of this, I had to get parking for I've forgotten how many hundreds of cars. Very boring, but I had to do it. And the only way to do it within the budget was to have some of it above grade. Well, I'm on grade here, coming back through the building. The last thing I want to do is bump this up a floor because I want all of this to be open to the public because all of this was going to be offices in a big ring, again, like the Uffizi. This back here, number 11 back here, is a curiosity to Japan. It's a convention room where you could have a small convention, or it's the wedding reception. They have 3 or 4 weddings a day. The wedding chapel is actually over here, underneath some stuff, but they have changed that. I'll show you where it is now. But the reception is back there, and the reason they like that so much is they sell a lot of booze in the Hyatt. So if you were in a taxi cab, you would be coming in here. You'd be buying a pastry or going to a restaurant out there. Into the front door, you'd see this big volume there. That's probably where your room would be. The cab would come underneath this porte cochere. By the way, they have something in Japan which is a copper-like substance that turns the copper immediately. It's actually uric acid. Don't examine uric too carefully because it's something we all do every day. But they won't let you use new copper because the water that comes off new copper they call dirty water. So you find these little curiosities about it. I have used copper on the porte cochere of my house, and I've been in it 25 years, and it's still brown. So sometime in my children's lifetime, maybe it'll turn green for me. Here's a section that I drew through the building. Not just a section, not just a plan, which is a section horizontally, not just a section vertically, but a perspective section, so that coming in here where we just were, there was the little copper lid. Coming in here, here's the lobby, and here's light coming down from outside. All of this is outside. And then there's this pyramid there that covers that lobby. And it's a pyramid because I wanted to get as much light falling down this shaft as possible into these corridors, which are there. You can see them here. And here are the guest rooms, there and back here, guest rooms. And then the offices. That's not, I'm so sorry. They'll give up. I can always tell when it's mine. Okay, and remember our nemesis, the parking? Well, here's our ground floor coming in, and here's our jump up for the parking. These are cars here, and this is the little gathering space back there. Now, I had to make something out of the stair, which has now been renamed the wedding stair. Of all things, this is where they like to get married, on the stairway. So here's the entrance. I don't know why this slides out of context, but here we are coming in with the cars under the porte cochere. And here's that pyramid, letting light into the lobby and light into, you remember, the corridors on either side. And here it is from one of those corridors.
What's in the pyramid?
Light. Just light. And dollars.
What else?
Yeah, that's right. And so here this is, and on axis from coming in, you continue on to the stair, which I'll show you now, because now you know the section. There's the wedding stair. It was made gold later. It isn't gold leaf, it's gold wallpaper. This is a Hyatt, kids. I mean, come on. This isn't Four Seasons. So the bride and groom stand here, and then they scamper up these stairs and meet at the top. Big hug, kiss, and then back to the convention room where they eat stale cake and that sort of thing. So, and there are the offices. And this is going on all day as they're behind glass. So if they're really worker bees, they don't notice it anymore. But it's very popular now. There's the drawn section. And Alfred asked, what's in the pyramid? And here's the light coming into the pyramid. and here's the space going up into the pyramid, and they're meeting at that point there, and you get that circle of movement around it.
Can you explain your comment about dollars? Light and dollars?
Sure. At some point, but it happened the opposite way. Here, I had drawn a very frugal scheme. I had drawn a scheme without a lot of hoop-to-do, and the developer said, could I have more? I'm in combat with the next developer who's building a Hilton, and I want to beat him. So you've got to give us some reason for the people to want to stay here, for the cab driver to say to that person, you want to stay at the Hyatt, not at the Hilton. So I wanted to do with it not something that they couldn't have on the outside, but something they could be a part of. And that light coming down is a part of that. The quip about dollars is that doesn't come cheaply. You know, I could have made a flat roof. It would have been very boring. But I wanted to get, and I could have still gotten light up above. All I needed to do was to get the water that would have come off that circle out of the building, which an internal drain would have done. So that's the comment about dollars.
What about heat? Is heat generated inside where the pyramid is?
Sure. The heat is collected.
Collecting the heat.
Yeah.
What about in the summertime air conditioning?
Well, since you and I are not up here, that's like a Renaissance palazzo. It's collecting the heat because it's up. Heat rises, obviously. But we're not up there, just the heat. So that's good for the building. Because we're always going to, people down here are going to generate heat. So whatever. Here's the lobby and our furniture for the lobby here. I was lucky. I had a client who said, do it all. Do the tables, do the chairs, do the rugs. I even painted a mural for back here. So this was still construction, but there's a big mural there now. Here's these are tiny rooms, by the way. Really tiny rooms. They're just enough. I loved them. I don't know whether I'd like it now in my new wheelchair, but in those days, I thought, well, one, this is why the Japanese are all thin. This is breakfast. I was even asked to design the yukata, which is a small version of a kimono for taking a shower, going into the shower and all of that. But all of this I got to use. I don't know why, but I see here I've got a picture of a painting, one of my paintings of Tuscany, but maybe that's where indeed the Japanese were going in those days. And it's the second to last building I want to show you is another kind of urban site. We're doing a master plan for Rice University now in Houston. And think about a big plot of ground like Le Corbusier showed us, and on top of that, the campus. I can't use your campus because I don't know it. But a series of buildings, some connecting with each other, others that communicate with each other because you need to get from one class to the next in 10 minutes, or at least in Princeton you do. So there is an arrangement and an understanding of campus buildings that are separate but related. This was a square that was made, well, not a square, but a garden really, that was made by the planners for Central Park in New York at the turn of the century. It was a huge plot of ground in the center of Denver. There was a museum over here done by an Italian, Giopanti, right there. There was a library that was right here that had once been a Ford agency, right there. but now was the city library. And they were going to quadruple its size. That meant a very big building. This is already a pretty big building. Here is that hemicycle that you see there. And there it is. So in building, this was a competition, in building 4 times the size of this, I knew that I'd have to stay in scale with this guy. Now there's a major street here. Denise Scott Brown, some of you know her as Bob Venturi's wife, was planning this. And this route here, there's a small theater there from the 19th century, late 19th century. The city hall and the state house are on either end in this big garden. So the cabs come in, go around it like that. They used to come through here and go around this way as well. This has been closed down to cars now. This is only pedestrian. But here's my Noli plan. There's the inside of the old library. There's our new route to it. There's a spine that comes across our new library from an entrance to one side, an entrance to the other. Now, where people will come is mostly this way and into a door there, here. They won't come down here and enter in this manner. This rotunda here is actually up on top of the building. We'll get to that in a moment. Or they will come from the museum and all these buildings on this side. This is the heart of the town, and come in here. So this spine becomes very, very important to my Noli plan. And these become important meeting rooms. This up on top of the building becomes the rare book room. And this one, lo and behold, becomes the branch library fit into now the central library. They love the idea of the branch within the central library. I'm going to show you a little pavilion there, which is the children's library. And I thought, my God, if I were a child walking into this behemoth of a building, I'd feel pretty lost. It'd be nice to have my own place. So indeed they do. This is our little sandbox outside. I'll show it to you. And they thought that it would glom onto the Bilbao effect, that everybody would race to Denver. Well, now the museum's closed 2 days a week. They can't pay their bills. They spent too much money, and the dream didn't come true. More people go to the library than to the Denver Art Museum because that craziness just didn't work in Denver. So one of my entries is over here on this side. The other one is over on that side. And that's the rare books room up there at the top. Here's this is the one where the street was then closed over here. And here's, the other side. And here's this side. The G7, that was a long time ago, met here. Gorbachev took a bus, a city bus, and was dropped off here and walked in with people taking his picture. He was the people's emperor, right? And he was going to show them that he didn't have a driver or a limousine. He took the city bus. I thought it was a good move. And here's the rare books room up on top. Here's the loggia along Denise's street. Here's my little pavilion, not yet turned green, but will, for the children. You do have to go into the library to get to it, but you just turn here and a hard left and you're in. And here's the reading room inside, as if the copper had turned inside. And so these kids are sitting, listening to a book being read to them. And this fanciful room, I think appropriate to the kids using it, and the pavilion are appropriate to that very big building. Here's our spine. We start at one end, and I'll just show you the foyer is here. New titles are displayed there, and then a metaphor for the stacks here as an architecture to make the foyer to scale with its purpose. and then into the Grand Hall, which is there, with 1% art along here, which is a disaster. The artist had a choo-choo train and a wagon train. For that, he got the same commission I did for designing the building. And he did his in chalk along here, you can see it. But here is all these people here reading from the library, looking out over the grand space there with lighting that we did. We didn't do these chairs, but we did the tables and so on. And again, a section model this time, not a drawing like we had in Fukuoka. And here's the rare books reading room up here at the top. And all of those rooms are special, new collections, periodicals, and then rare books. These are, we talk about sustainable design today. And it's interesting that in Denver, there's a stone that looks like this, and it is a gorgeous stone. It's got a little more ore in it, a little more yellow in it, and a red stone that looks like this. Well, this is actually from the Ural Mountains in Germany, and this is from Scandinavia. It was quarried, cut, honed, sent, erected for less money than we can do it in Denver. What's wrong with this picture? So this is what hampers the architect. I'll probably tell the story tonight that the Sony building in New York, and that was the AT&T building, is made of Connecticut sandstone, redstone, and it's a wonderful stone. It was quarried in Connecticut. Connecticut, as you know, is right next to New York City. Quarried in Connecticut, put on a boat, sent to Italy to be cut, sent to Scandinavia to be polished and honed, back on a boat, back to New York, and erected on Madison Avenue, where it started. What's wrong with this picture? You figure it out. If you started tomorrow, if you all got together tomorrow and said we're going to have the best marble cutting devices in the world in the United States, you'd be here running a class like Mr. Taubman is in a few years. Here is the rare books room where the G7 had its meeting. I'm very proud of this because they called the government, our government called and said, what's the best room in Denver? And they sent them here to have their meeting, so I was very pleased.